Dear Rock Ministries, I am a juvenile inmate at the House of Corrections. I remember you coming up a couple times to give us a church service. I would like to thank you for that, because I know if I didn't go to jail, I would still probably running the streets, smoking weed, selling drugs, and the crime that got me here in the first place, robbing people. I think that it's a shame that I had to come to prison to realize that my mother had been telling me the truth since I was a little boy, to follow Jesus. Now that I think about it, I'm kind of glad I came to prison. Don't get me wrong, I'm not really glad I came to prison. I just know that if I didn't come, I would still be in the streets doing the same things. I guess this is just God's way of opening my eyes and allowing me to see my mistakes. I'm also writing you to find out more about your boxing program. I would like to thank you for your time, for reading my letter, and ask you to keep me in your prayers.
I had the opportunity to go on a missions trip with Calvary Chapel, Philadelphia, and it was at that time that I met a group of fine men and godly men at that, and one of them was Paul Orr. And we toured all through the Far East. We went into the prison camps for kids, and we spent about 3 weeks over there, and it was great. It was a great experience. And when we returned, unbeknownst to me, Paul Orr had been going to the House of Correction on State Road in Philadelphia, was going in pretty regular, and he never said a word that he was going in, but we got into a conversation one day, and he said, yeah, I go into the prisons and preach the gospel to the kids who are incarcerated. And it was at that time that I wanted to go in with him, and we made arrangements, and that's how basically we started our friendship, and it's when we start first to really introduce the gospel to young kids in the city of Philadelphia who happen to be behind a prison wall.
There was a yearning in Buddy's heart. He was training guys down at Johan's gym at the time, and he had a desire to do more than just teach guys how to box.
So Paul and I were saying, what can we do to be more effective and to try to get these kids from not going into prison? And so we did a little brainstorming, and basically what we said, listen, there's a Joe Hand's boxing gym. We're good friends with Joe, and we presented Joe with this idea that we're starting this ministry, and we got a name, Rock Ministries of Philadelphia.
And I would say it was probably at that time that he and I just looked at each other and said, this is it. We have to do more for these kids. We have to break this cycle that these kids are under.
There's plenty of kids throughout the city of Philadelphia who have no guidance and who have no knowledge actually of what God can truly do for them in their lives. So what we've done over the last year and a half is to create a base of kids. And our goal is to have a foundation of a core group of kids, 5 or 6 kids. Develop these kids, disciple these kids, mentor these kids, and let these kids bring the kids in from the community. And that's one way of really reaching out and bringing these kids in from the inner city is with our own kids that we develop, and we mentor and we disciple. And it's proof is in the pudding. There's times that we have up to 60, 70 kids at our ministry on a Thursday night. And the amazing thing about it was when we first started, there was just 1 or 2.
They're coming from a fatherless home. They're caught up in a lifestyle. They're getting no direction, no leadership. and they got to break this cycle. They have to get out of it and get on the right track. And Buddy and I both know, because we broke a cycle that we were in, is the answer is Jesus. One of the things that Buddy and I have talked about time and time again is how one kid, just one kid, can make all the difference in the world. One kid can make a difference for the Lord, give their lives to Jesus Christ, and the Lord can take that young man and just use him. I mean, throughout the Bible, we see how God used young men to change the course of nations. I mean, Joseph and Daniel and the Apostle John, all these guys, young men, Timothy in the New Testament, all just young men who God used in just incredible and powerful ways.
Know that we can even do more when we can add different programs such as basketball. We want to intensify the weight training. We have a strong desire to reach these kids through the hip-hop movement that's going on now, through hip-hop, Christian hip-hop music.
I'd act wickedly in captivity while watching myself rot. Born with a death sentence, warned to neglect repentance by my Lord who expressed vengeance by deceiving my mind and keeping me blind.
I believe that there is definitely a strong need for the gospel to be communicated in hip-hop form when you're in a hip-hop area, because most people say that kids or young adults in the inner city just aren't listening to anybody. And I believe that everybody listens to somebody, even for somebody who's saying, I'm being a rebel and I don't listen to anybody. Somebody told them to say that. Somebody taught them to think that way.
He who has an ear, let him hear. Let him hear. I pray you're thirsty for his grace and mercy, but if your heart's hardened, better fear. Better fear.
The thing is, they're not listening to the school teachers. They're not listening to parents. Fathers aren't around to even be heard. They're not listening to authority figures. What they are listening to is the hip-hop and the artists of hip-hop. And these people have become the voices that help teach these kids how to look at life. Don't teach them the right way, but nonetheless the kids are listening. And so this form of music, which can often be labeled as just bad music, is really just urban music that happens to get labeled with and infiltrated with a lot of bad lyrics these days. And what hip-hop becomes is a pipeline through which young inner city people can hear a message in a way that's relevant for them and in a way that grabs their ear because it reaches down to who they are culturally, and there's a new message being presented. And since hip-hop is about representing what you think, how you see things, the gospel can be plugged right into that, since hip-hop is a perfect form of communication in terms of representing how you see life.
You know, when a kid comes into the ministry, for example, the gym here, one of the things is we talk to the kid and we observe this kid, and from experience, Paul and I, we recognize when you got kids who come in, if they have a chip on the shoulder, if they're downtrodden, brokenhearted, we'll figure it out pretty quickly.
If one guy wants to come out for the Bible study, then I'm going to go in, I'm going to give him a study, I'm going to share the gospel, I'm going to disciple this young man. Even if it is only one person, that's okay with me.
One of the interesting things we do is when we bring a kid in, and if he's interested in boxing, I'll ask him, has he ever fought before? And he says, "I've never fought. I'm the baddest guy in the neighborhood. I've never lost." I said, "All right, well, how do you hold your hands?" And he'll put his hands up like this. And I'll say, "Okay, well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to put you on the line." And he looks at me like, "Line? What line? We'll put you on a line. We're going to put your hands up. That's it. Get your chin down. Now, the first thing I want to teach you is how to step with your hands high. And now what this kid is doing, he's where normally he wouldn't listen to instructions. Now he's listening to instructions. His hands are held high, his chin's down. And now he's going along with the program. So you give us, I often tell people, you give us the toughest kid in the city of Philadelphia, and in 2-3 weeks, we'll break them down right in this gym, right in this ministry. Because when we break them down physically is when the gospel comes in and builds them up spiritually.